Hey, this is the Panhandle Prepper here again, and had a question. Somebody asked me recently, so I figured I'd give them a quick answer here on food storage. One of the things that I was asked was, how do I store pasta? And this person said that when I store pasta, bugs get in the boxes and the cabinets, and I lose my pasta. So, store-bought pasta on sale, or maybe homemade pasta, something like that. So, here's one solution. Here's one way that I store it. Is we've got these here, and all these are just BPA free plastic storage containers, microwave safe, freezer safe, dishwasher safe. And so what I did to make it airtight, if you can see, is I've got some masking tape that I put over there. I guess you could use duct tape and or whatever you've got, and basically I just rang it around the neck of there to get a nice tight seal, try to make it as airtight as possible. And then of course I like the date, put the date on there a couple of different spots, so that way no matter where it is I know the date and time. All that is that's about 2 pounds, this container right here, and I'll just stick this in my cabinet or on my shelf, and I'll make sure it's in a dark spot so the sun's not beating on it, baking it, keep it cool, keep it at a good temperature. And so that's about it. And so you just buy these containers. I think this one was maybe $4 or $5. Well worth the investment. Like we talked about with money, you want to spend money where it needs to be spent. It doesn't need to be spent on an elaborate chicken house or rabbit pen. It needs to be spent on the proper tools for storing food. So there's the one option there. And here's another option. This is something I already had. This is one of those plastic containers that has a little plastic seal and little locking thing. This is just one of your noodle pasta containers you probably have in a cabinet. And again, all I did was I just took some tape and I just ran tape, the thin masking tape around that seal. And then I used my finger and I pushed nice and firm and try to get it as smooth as I can to try to make it as airtight as possible. And of course I'll date it. I like to date it on a couple of different spots. And then I'll go ahead and I'll store this on the shelf or pantry or wherever where it's not in direct sunlight. And that should hold up pretty much indefinitely. And even if it gets a little sour, if it's 5 or 10 years old, you heat it up. You're going to boil it for over 10 minutes, so that's going to kill your germs and everything else there. So that's one good option. Here's another option. Let me show you this. This is one of my favorite things here with food storage. I use this method a lot, and what you've got there is a 5-gallon bucket. And that's all that is, a 5-gallon bucket. And here's some different things I've got stored. This is, I think, 1 or 2 years old, this bucket. I pulled it off and pulled the lid out and try to show a couple of things that I like to do here. So first off, what I've got here, I'll pull one bag out. This is going to be instant mashed potatoes, double bagged, and I have marked on there the serving portions and how to mix it, and of course it's dated, and it's just folded up, double bagged. There you go, in the bucket. That should last pretty much forever. And did the same thing with some pancake mix. Double bag, double Ziploc bag, as much air out as possible, and then I write the directions on how you make this stuff. That's something people might not think about, is if you don't write the directions on here or have a little piece of cardboard in there. I don't like to put cardboard in there because it could hold moisture. So that's your enemies, is moisture, and that's one of your main enemies with food spoilage is moisture. So you want to make sure that you have that cardboard out of there. That's what I like to do anyway. But here's my pasta. Again, this thing is full. This thing is full of all kinds of stuff. So I don't really consider this a long-term food storage, although it might turn into that. I would probably venture to say at least a good 5 years. 3 to 5 years is safe, no problem. But in an emergency situation, I'll eat it if I have to, if I'm starving. Now this is just pasta. Notice it's double Ziploc bag, and it's going to be in that container. And so it's pretty much bug proof, but extra assurance on there. What I like to do, if you can see on there, it's got some white powder in there. Now, what is that? There it is. There's a good shot. What is that white powder? It's diatomaceous earth. What I do is I took a big handful of diatomaceous earth, and I sprinkled it all around the spaghetti enough so if there is a critter that gets in there, and hopefully it will get that diatomaceous earth on him and die, and before he can hatch and spread and everything else. So it's a cheap insurance policy. That's that same diatomaceous earth that you've seen on one of my other videos that I put in that spaghetti bag. So that way it can store properly, and if a critter gets in there, it's going to be hard luck to do that. I guess if I really wanted to, or if somebody wanted to, they can go ahead and put a nice thick seal of duct tape or something on that seal. But I've got 2 bags in there. I feel pretty confident it'll be okay. And you should check this stuff. This stuff is from last year, 5/11/11, and I put in there, in case I forget, with diatomaceous earth. That's what's in there. 2 pounds of spaghetti. Mark what it is on everything that you do. Okay. So there's some spaghetti. There's some more spaghetti. 2 more pounds. Same thing. Lots of diatomaceous earth in there. Double bag, double Ziploc bag. Fold it over. You could duct tape that off if you wanted to, and stick it in your bucket. Here's another thing I did. This is split peas. Double bagged. Double Ziploc bag. Suck all the air out with a straw. And again, with diatomaceous earth in there. Okay? And you can sprinkle it, sift it out, rinse it off. You don't have to eat the diatomaceous earth if you don't want to when it comes time for cooking that stuff. So let's see what else I got here. I have it here. Some more of those, some more peas. What else is in that bucket? I have no idea what I put in there. So you know what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to label on the bucket what you have in there, so you don't have to guess and wonder. Don't forget to do that, like I've already done, is I've got it labeled on there. Oops, Lowe's. Don't worry, I'm not selling anything, it's just a bucket. I'll cover you up, I'll blur you out. There's Lowe's bucket, and in there it says I have dry beans, split peas, how many pounds of rice, cornbread, biscuits, how many pounds, pancake, etc. That way I just glance at my bucket and I know what's in that bucket, so that I'll know what food I have. I don't have to break all this stuff apart. So you don't have to buy a Lowe's bucket, but I happen to have one, so I used it. And there's just another glimpse of some of the different things I have in there that are marked, organized, diatomaceous earth. That's one way to do it. Now, since I have a couple more minutes, I'll put this stuff back in and I'll keep talking. Let's see. Sometimes when you get these flours or pancake mixes, or you're going to use flour and stuff, is people will freeze them before they store them. They'll freeze them, so it kills all the eggs, the weevils, and stuff like that. That's probably a really good idea. Just the other day, I was going through and checking some of my storage, food storage, and I lost 75 pounds of flour that I didn't store right, covered in all kinds of little bugs, whatever they are, weevils, or little tiny miniature, gnats or whatever they might have been. And so I lost them all. I was pretty mad about that. So I lost all that flour. I didn't store it properly, so I had to go back through my notes and back through my books and figure out what I did wrong, so it won't happen again. You're going to lose some things in your food storage. There's a formula, they call it 1/3, a 3 formula. You should store your food in 3 different ways. For instance, canning is a good way, freeze drying is another good way, and maybe a bag system, something like this, or a Tupperware or something like that. As far as your beans or your rices and stuff like that. So you should have a backup system. Now, you should have 3 different ways that you store the same product, and then out of all that same product, say flour, beans, or rice, that you have stored up in 3 different ways, you might as well count on 1/3 of all that product, all that food storage. It's not going to make it for some reason. So that's the equation, the formula of 3s. And I'll go through that more later on. So one type of food stored 3 different ways: freeze dried, right? Canned, store canned, home canned, freeze dried, something like that. That way, it's a backup system. Your backup system of 3s. So 3 different ways, and when you have your bulk storage of that one specific item, however many cans it might be, or bottles and freeze dried, whatever that bulk of that one item is, 1/3 of that whole inventory, that bulk of one item, is not going to make it. That's what the experts say. So that's a safe bet. So as you build your storage, you should try to build on those principles. And if at least nothing else, all your eggs should not be in one basket. You should absolutely, most definitely, store each item as a minimum of two. Really should do it three different ways. You should store each food item, and then have multiple food items in the same food group. So if 1/3 of that stuff fails, it'll work itself out where you have enough food in an emergency situation or just for family storage. So hopefully that's helpful. I've got lots of stuff on food storage that we'll get to here in a little while. We've got the formula of threes we just talked about, and I've got another formula of sets of 52 is what I call it. Different sets of 52, and there's a formula, and I'll make another video down the road a little bit on that, and that way it gives you a mindset on, it shows you an example of how much food you need to store by using sets of 52. 7 sets of 52, 46 sets of 52. And I'll write the equations out. It's really not hard. Don't worry, it's simple. And that way you have a visual picture in your head very quickly of how much food you're going to need for how many people you have in your family for the length of time that you want to have food stored up for. Whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, 10 years, 30 years, whatever it might be. And then you can calculate it out that way. You calculate the costs. And then you can look at your different ways. For example, there's some food that it's virtually impossible, at least for me anyway, to store up 3 different ways if I was going to count on something, because it's going to be so expensive. Like a freeze-dried food manufactured from a company. You're talking about $15,000 worth of freeze-dried food to fit into that. So that's not feasible. So once you see that, you have to figure out your backup plan in order to meet your needs, your budget needs. A lot of people like me out there, they just can't afford to just pay one of these big name companies 15 or 20 grand. They ship me out a big shipment and there my food is. I wouldn't trust that anyway. If you don't put your hands on your own food and learn how to store it using the proper techniques, you might as well forget it. A lot of that stuff's not going to make it. They're just trying to take your money, and I know that. So just trying to be helpful to you. All right. Well, that's it. Oh, one more thing I want to talk about. Now, when you put this stuff up on a shelf, look at this. You don't want to just jam everything out nice and close together, like this. Okay? First of all, it's going to fall over. But second of all, air is not going to get around that. The climate that I live in is very humid, very hot, and if the electric goes out and the humidity sets in, it's going to really cook a lot of food. So the way I store my food is I make sure that there's space, a little bit of space in between, little extra space in between each one of my food items. Yeah, it's going to take up a little bit extra space, but when it comes time for an emergency, all of my food is properly spaced, and what I can do is I can throw a fan. I could put a fan up from a generator, run a DC fan off of some batteries, off of solar power real easily off of my truck, and I can blow some air and cool down my food supply if temperatures get ridiculous. So even if it's just a quarter of an inch, half an inch, 1 inch, you want to put a little bit of space in between there. And then as you're stacking your food, think about your airways, that your airway can stay clear. You don't want to just block your airways. You want to keep your airways. See how the airway is blocked right there? So if I'm blowing a fan through here, it's going to hit that. The air's not going to get through there and circulate. Think about a radiator in your car or truck. That's how that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it from here and just move it over a little bit. Make sure that they get good airflow going through there. Try to buy the same container sizes and stack the same ones behind each other, so they're like veins through a radiator that will cool down your food supply. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? Cooling down your food supply? But when you get into temperatures 100, 115 degrees, you better cool it down if you can. And so there's lots of tricks we're going to get into, but that should answer your question and give you some things to think about with your food storage. So there's your dry goods, and we'll go over some more as they come along, and hopefully that was a help to you. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.